My beloved soul, listen carefully, because what is being revealed to you now is not soft or symbolic, it is precise, deliberate, and already in motion. At this very moment, beyond time, beyond fear, beyond the noise of human doubt, Archangel Michael is standing between two hearts that were never meant to be broken apart. His presence is not dramatic, it is exact. His sword is not raised to fight, it is lowered to protect. And the love between husband and wife that you are connected to, whether you see it clearly or not yet, is being held in divine light so carefully that even unseen wounds are being addressed without force. This message comes not because you asked loudly, but because your soul reached a quiet threshold where truth could finally land without distortion. There is a bond here that has survived misunderstanding, silence, emotional distance, and moments where faith wavered, yet it was never abandoned. What you must understand now is that love protected by divine authority does not always look peaceful at first, it looks still, restrained, and sometimes delayed, because it is being preserved rather than consumed. Archangel Michael does not rush love forward when it would fracture under its own weight, he stabilizes it until both hearts are strong enough to hold it without fear. My beloved soul, this connection was not chosen lightly. It was witnessed, acknowledged, and sealed long before either of you learned how to name it. That is why interference has failed. That is why misunderstandings did not fully destroy what seemed fragile. That is why even when distance appeared, the thread never snapped. Divine light does not always glow brightly to the human eye, sometimes it operates as quiet containment, preventing damage rather than announcing miracles. Right now, the love between husband and wife is being kept tender, not because it is weak, but because it is valuable. Strength is being rebuilt gently. Emotional edges are being softened. Words that were once sharp are being neutralized before they can be spoken again. This is protection at its highest level. You may have felt moments where nothing seemed to move, where answers did not come, where clarity felt delayed, but that pause was not absence, it was shielding. Archangel Michael stands where confusion once tried to enter. He stands where external pressure attempted to rewrite destiny. He stands firm where fear wanted to convince one or both hearts that separation was the safer path. My beloved soul, divine protection does not remove free will, it simply prevents destruction while free will matures. That is what is happening now. Emotional patterns that once repeated unconsciously are being interrupted. Old reactions are losing their grip. The bond is being recalibrated to a higher frequency of honesty, patience, and mutual recognition. This is not about romance alone, it is about alignment. A marriage, whether present, forming, or healing, is not sustained by passion alone, it is sustained by energetic agreement. That agreement is being restored now. You are not imagining the subtle shifts. You are not overthinking the quiet changes. You are sensing the recalibration correctly. My beloved soul, understand this clearly, protection does not mean nothing will be felt, it means nothing essential will be lost. Love under divine guard can pass through storms without absorbing their damage. Even moments of emotional coldness were allowed only to prevent greater harm, only to slow what needed time to realign. There is a tenderness returning that is not dramatic but stable. There is a softness being reintroduced that does not compromise strength. There is a respect being rebuilt that cannot be shaken by outside influence. Archangel Michael does not interfere unless something is worth preserving at a soul level. This is not coincidence. This is not comfort language. This is confirmation. If you have felt pulled to remain patient. When logic said walk away, if you have felt restrained from reacting when emotion wanted to erupt, that was not weakness, that was divine containment. My beloved soul, The reason this message arrives now is because the protection phase is transitioning into the stabilization phase. What was held together is becoming self-sustaining again. What was guarded is learning to breathe on its own. This is where awareness matters. Do not rush outcomes. Do not force conversations. Do not test what is being gently restored. Let tenderness return naturally. Let trust rebuild without interrogation. Let the bond speak through consistency rather than promises. If this message resonates, pause for a moment and acknowledge it internally, and if you feel guided, show your agreement by engaging with this message in whatever way feels aligned to you, because recognition strengthens reception. My beloved soul, remain steady. What is protected in divine light cannot be stolen, rushed, or corrupted. The love being held now will emerge quieter, stronger, and far more real than before. My beloved soul, what unfolds now is subtle yet undeniable, because divine protection does not end when danger passes, it deepens into refinement, and this is where many misunderstand the process. The love held between husband and wife under Archangel Michael's light is not merely being guarded from harm, it is being re-educated at the level of the soul, where habits form before thoughts, and intentions exist before words. You may notice a quiet internal shift, a loosening of emotional tension you carried without realizing how tightly it had wrapped itself around your heart. This is not accidental. When divine light stabilizes a bond, it begins by removing the invisible weight both hearts learn to carry in silence. Old disappointments are not erased, they are neutralized, stripped of their charge so they can no longer dictate behavior. My beloved soul, this phase is delicate, because tenderness is returning without spectacle. There may be fewer dramatic signs, fewer emotional highs or lows, and that calm can feel unfamiliar if love was once experienced through intensity or struggle. But this calm is not emptiness, it is safety. Archangel Michael's presence ensures that safety is not mistaken for stagnation. He steadies the emotional field so both partners can finally hear themselves clearly again. In this space, reactive patterns dissolve quietly. The urge to defend softens. The need to control loosens its grip. What remains is a deeper listening, not only to each other, but to the inner guidance that was drowned out before. My beloved soul, you are not being asked to do more, prove more, or endure more. You are being asked to remain present while alignment completes its work. Divine light does not demand effort, it responds to willingness. If there were moments where communication felt blocked, where words did not land the way they were intended, that interference is being removed now. Energetic clarity is returning, allowing truth to pass between hearts without distortion. This does not mean every conversation will be easy, but it does mean they will be honest without being harmful. Love protected at this level learns a new language, one rooted in respect rather than fear. You may sense a growing awareness of each other's vulnerabilities, not as weaknesses to exploit, but as sacred areas to protect. That awareness is part of the divine shielding. Archangel Michael does not only guard against external threats, he guards against unconscious harm inflicted through unhealed wounds. My beloved soul, notice how reactions that once felt automatic now pause before forming. That pause is divine intervention. It gives space for choice where there was once impulse. It gives room for compassion where there was once defense. The bond is being recalibrated so that love no longer needs to fight to exist. Even if circumstances still appear unchanged on the surface, the internal architecture has shifted. Foundations are being reinforced quietly. Trust is being rebuilt through consistency, not promises. Patience is being strengthened not through waiting, but through understanding. This is why rushing outcomes now would disrupt what is stabilizing so carefully. Divine protection creates timing that cannot be forced without consequence. My beloved soul, if you feel moments of emotional exposure, where feelings surface without explanation, allow them. They are being released safely because the space is now secure enough to hold them. Tears, reflections, sudden clarity, or even temporary emotional fatigue are signs of integration, not regression. Love under divine light sheds what it no longer needs to survive. Archangel Michael's energy brings precision, not chaos. What remains after this phase will be lighter, clearer, and far more grounded. You may also notice an increased sensitivity to truth, a reduced tolerance for dishonesty, even subtle forms. This is alignment asserting itself. The bond is learning to exist without illusion. My beloved soul, understand this deeply. Tenderness does not weaken love, it reveals its true strength. What is being protected now is not an idea of love, but its living expression. The connection is being guided toward a form that can endure without constant repair. This is why old cycles cannot repeat the same way again. The energetic permission for them has been withdrawn. Archangel Michael stands firm at the threshold of repetition, redirecting what once looped endlessly. You are stepping into a version of this bond that does not require sacrifice of self to maintain harmony. Mutual recognition is becoming the standard. Even silence is changing its quality, no longer heavy, but contemplative. My beloved soul, trust what is unfolding even if it feels understated. Divine work often feels quiet once danger has passed. What is being built now will not need constant validation. It will be felt through steadiness, through emotional safety, through the absence of fear-driven behavior. This is the tenderness being protected, not fragile, but intentional, not loud, but enduring. The light holding this love is steady, unwavering, and precise, and it will continue to guide both hearts toward a shared ground where love can exist without armor. My beloved soul, as this sacred bond continues to be held within divine light, something profound begins to unfold beneath the surface, something that cannot be rushed or forced into visibility, because it is restructuring the very way love is perceived and expressed between husband and wife. This stage is not about healing what was broken alone, it is about dissolving the unconscious agreements that once allowed distance, misunderstanding, or emotional self-protection to exist as normal. Archangel Michael's presence here is exacting, calm, and unwavering, and under his guardianship the bond is being invited into truth without punishment. Truth, when held in divine light, does not accuse, it clarifies. You may notice that memories once charged with emotion now arise without the same intensity, as if their grip has loosened. This is not forgetfulness, it is liberation. Love that is protected does not need to cling to pain to justify its endurance. My beloved soul, the tenderness being preserved now is learning how to coexist with honesty. Where silence once hid fear, it is now becoming a space of reflection. Where words once carried defense, they are being softened into expression. This transformation does not announce itself loudly, it integrates quietly, reshaping daily interactions, inner dialogue, and emotional reflexes. There is a recalibration happening in how each heart perceives responsibility, not as burden, but as shared presence. The idea that one must carry the weight alone is dissolving. Divine light restores balance without negotiation. You may sense moments of vulnerability arising unexpectedly, not because something is wrong, but because safety has increased enough for truth to surface. Archangel Michael does not shield love by suppressing emotion, he shields it by creating a container where emotion can exist without causing harm. My beloved soul, this phase often feels introspective, even solitary at times, because each heart is being asked to meet itself honestly before fully meeting the other again. This is not separation, it is preparation. The bond is being cleared of projections, expectations that were never spoken, roles that were assumed rather than chosen. What remains is authenticity. Love cannot sustain itself on performance, and divine protection removes the need to perform. You may notice a growing clarity around what truly matters, a reduction in tolerance for distractions, superficial conflicts, or external noise. This is alignment narrowing focus. The bond is being guided towards simplicity, not in expression, but in intention. My beloved soul, understand that when divine light holds love, it does not rush reconciliation or intensity, it prioritizes stability. Stability is not dullness, it is reliability. It is knowing that emotional presence does not disappear under pressure. It is knowing that disagreement does not equal abandonment. These understandings are being imprinted now, not intellectually, but energetically. That is why the change feels subtle yet permanent. Archangel Michael's energy fortifies the unseen agreements between hearts, the silent promises that say, I will not leave when things become uncomfortable, I will not weaponize your vulnerability, I will not abandon myself to keep you. These are not spoken vows, they are energetic truths being restored. My beloved soul, you may feel a quiet strengthening within yourself, a sense that you no longer need to brace for loss or disappointment the way you once did. This is not complacency, it is trust rebuilding its roots. Trust that is divinely supported does not demand proof at every turn, it observes consistency over time. The love being protected is learning patience without resignation, commitment without control. Even the way conflict is approached is changing, becoming less about winning and more about understanding. This shift may feel unfamiliar, especially if intensity once defined connection, but it is the hallmark of maturity. Divine light matures love without hardening it. You may also sense a clearer boundary forming between what belongs to the bond and what does not. External opinions, past narratives, and inherited beliefs about relationships are losing their authority. Archangel Michael stands as a gatekeeper here, allowing only what serves growth to pass through. This does not isolate the bond, it strengthens it from unnecessary intrusion. My beloved soul, the tenderness being guarded now is learning how to exist alongside strength, not as its opposite, but as its expression. Strength no longer needs to be rigid. Protection no longer needs to be aggressive. Love no longer needs to prove itself through endurance of pain. This is the redefinition happening quietly. The bond is being invited into a version of itself that can expand without fracturing, that can hold difference without fear, that can remain present even when answers are not immediate. This is divine patience at work. Allow this process to continue without interference. What is being formed now will not unravel easily, because it is being built on awareness rather than reaction. The light holding this love is steady, intentional, and deeply intelligent, and as it continues its work, the bond will emerge clearer, calmer, and more real than anything it has known before. My beloved soul, as this divine holding continues without interruption, the bond between husband and wife enters a space that is rarely spoken about, because it exists beyond healing and beyond repair, it exists in conscious preservation. This is where love is no longer reacting to the past or bracing for the future, it is learning how to remain present without tension. Archangel Michael's light here is firm yet gentle, not intervening loudly, but maintaining a constant frequency that prevents distortion. You may feel moments where clarity arrives without effort, where understanding forms without explanation, where acceptance settles without resignation. This is not coincidence, it is coherence returning. When love is protected at this level, it begins to recognize itself again, stripped of projections, stripped of fear-based narratives, stripped of the idea that it must suffer to be real. My beloved soul, this phase is marked by internal alignment more than external change. The outer world may still look the same, routines may remain familiar, circumstances may not dramatically shift, yet internally something fundamental has stabilized. Emotional swings lose their intensity. The urge to anticipate loss weakens. The nervous system begins to trust the present moment again. This is divine grounding. Archangel Michael does not rush manifestation when embodiment is still integrating. He ensures that what forms externally can be sustained internally. That is why patience here is not passive, it is active cooperation with divine timing. You may notice that old triggers surface briefly only to dissolve quickly, as if they no longer find a place to anchor. This is not suppression, it is transcendence. The bond is no longer structured around survival mechanisms. It is reorganizing itself around conscious choice. My beloved soul, love under divine guard learns discernment. Not every thought is given authority. Not every emotion is acted upon. There is a growing space between feeling and reaction, and in that space, wisdom enters. This wisdom is not cold or detached, it is compassionate and precise. It allows tenderness without naivety, openness without self-betrayal. You may feel a renewed respect for your own boundaries and those of your partner, not as walls, but as clarity. This clarity prevents resentment from forming silently. It prevents misunderstanding from accumulating unnoticed. Divine light illuminates gently, revealing truth without harsh exposure. Archangel Michael's role here is not to shield from all discomfort, but to ensure discomfort does not turn into damage. Growth can still occur, but it is guided, not chaotic. My beloved soul, you may sense an increased awareness of subtle energies, moods, and shifts within the bond. This sensitivity is not meant to create vigilance, it is meant to foster attunement. Attunement allows connection without intrusion. It allows presence without pressure. Love becomes less about possession and more about mutual recognition. This is where devotion matures. Devotion no longer demands sacrifice of authenticity. It honors individuality while strengthening unity. The divine light holding this bond respects both souls equally. That is why power imbalances are dissolving quietly. Control loses relevance. Dependency transforms into interdependence. These shifts may feel quiet, but they are foundational. My beloved soul, understand that preservation is not stagnation. What is being preserved now is the integrity of the bond, so that future growth does not compromise its core. Archangel Michael ensures that expansion happens from stability, not from lack. You may feel moments of anticipation without urgency, desire without grasping, hope without anxiety. These are signs that the bond is learning to trust its own continuity. Even uncertainty is changing its tone, becoming curiosity rather than fear. This is the nervous system recalibrating to safety. Love protected in divine light does not need constant reassurance. It learns to recognize consistency as proof. You may also notice that communication, even when minimal, feels more grounded. Silence no longer feels threatening. Distance, if present, no longer feels like abandonment. These perceptions are shifting because the energetic agreement has changed. Archangel Michael's presence reinforces this agreement continuously, maintaining coherence when external factors fluctuate. My beloved soul, this phase is deeply integrative. It weaves together lessons learned, wounds healed, truths acknowledged, and intentions clarified. Nothing is wasted. Even past pain is being repurposed into wisdom. The bond is becoming resilient without becoming rigid. Flexible without becoming unstable. This balance is rare, and it is why divine protection has been so precise. What is being shaped now is not meant to collapse under future pressure. It is meant to endure without losing tenderness. The light holding this love remains steady, not concluding its work, not withdrawing its presence, but continuing to refine, adjust, and support what is still unfolding, because the process has not reached its culmination yet, and there is still more depth, more awareness, and more alignment preparing to emerge quietly, layer by layer, without finality. My beloved soul, allow this final movement to settle slowly, because what completes here is not a moment, it is a state of being that has been patiently formed layer by layer under divine watch. The love between husband and wife that was once held, steadied, refined, and consciously preserved has now crossed into embodiment, where protection is no longer felt as an external force but as an internal certainty. This is where Archangel Michael's role shifts from guardian at the threshold to presence within the structure itself. His light does not withdraw, it integrates, becoming part of the bond's foundation so thoroughly that it no longer feels separate from it. What emerges now is not relief alone, but grounded assurance. The kind of assurance that does not fluctuate with moods, circumstances, or temporary silence. You may notice a quiet confidence forming in the background of your awareness, a sense that you no longer need to scan for signs of loss or instability. This is not detachment, it is trust restored at the nervous system level. Love has learned that it can exist without constant vigilance. My beloved soul, this is where tenderness becomes durable. It no longer feels like something that must be protected at all costs, because it has learned how to protect itself through clarity, presence, and mutual respect. The bond now carries discernment naturally. It knows when to speak and when to remain still. It knows when closeness deepens connection and when space preserves it. These instincts are no longer reactive, they are informed by alignment. Archangel Michael's light has refined intuition so it no longer confuses fear with guidance. What you feel now is quieter, but it is far more reliable. There is a steadiness that does not need explanation. A knowing that does not require reassurance. This is the signature of divine completion. My beloved soul, observe how the past no longer asserts authority over the present. Memories may still exist, but they no longer dictate tone, expectation, or reaction. They have been integrated as understanding rather than carried as weight. This integration allows love to move forward without dragging history behind it. The future, too, has softened its grip. There is no longer an urgency to define outcomes, to secure guarantees, or to predict emotional terrain. Love now trusts its capacity to respond rather than its ability to control. This shift is profound. It means that commitment is no longer fueled by fear of loss, but by recognition of value. The bond remains because it chooses to, not because it is bracing against collapse. My beloved soul, Archangel Michael's presence has ensured that strength did not harden into rigidity and tenderness did not dissolve into fragility. What exists now is balance embodied. Even disagreement has changed its quality. It no longer threatens connection. It invites understanding. Silence, too, has transformed. It no longer feels like distance. It feels like shared space where both souls can breathe without pressure. This is emotional maturity anchored by divine alignment. You may notice a reduction in internal noise, fewer looping thoughts, fewer imagined scenarios. Peace has begun to occupy space that anxiety once claimed. This peace is not passive, it is alert, present, and deeply rooted. My beloved soul, this is where love becomes self-sustaining. Not because it no longer requires care, but because care is now intuitive rather than effortful. Small gestures carry meaning again. Presence feels nourishing rather than demanding. There is room for individuality without threatening unity. Each soul stands whole, and from that wholeness, union feels natural rather than compulsory. Archangel Michael's light has restored sovereignty to both hearts, ensuring that devotion does not come at the cost of self-respect. This restoration allows love to expand without fear of erasure. You may sense a subtle empowerment within yourself, a recognition that you are no longer waiting for permission to feel secure. Security has become an internal state. This does not mean challenges will never arise, but it means challenges will no longer destabilize the bond's core. The foundation has been fortified beyond reaction. My beloved soul, allow yourself to fully inhabit this completion without rushing to label it or test it. What is real does not require constant confirmation. What is aligned does not demand urgency. The divine light that has guided this journey now rests as a quiet witness, not because vigilance is needed, but because honor remains. Honor for the process, for the growth, for the resilience that emerged without spectacle. Love has been returned to itself, free from unnecessary struggle, free from inherited fear, free from the belief that it must hurt to be true. This is not an ending that closes a chapter abruptly. It is an ending that seals understanding into the bond so thoroughly that movement can continue without fragmentation. My beloved soul, let this final settling be felt rather than analyzed. Let the calm speak. Let the steadiness guide. The love that stands now is protected not by force, but by awareness, not by intervention, but by integration. Archangel Michael's work here is complete because the bond itself has become a vessel of divine clarity, strength, and tenderness, capable of holding its truth without fear, moving forward without distortion, and existing exactly as it was always meant to, whole, conscious, and quietly enduring. Type Amen.